Call to order the rescheduled January board meeting for USD 464 for January 16th, 2024. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we've got some new faces tonight. Welcome, Mrs. Vernon and Mr. Bruni. We appreciate your service and so glad to have you here. And we're here to support you guys as you figure out what's going on. And I know we've got some board orientation that comes from KASB that we were supposed to go to tomorrow that got canceled. So we'll have to figure out when we can do that, but welcome. Action item 1.3 is the election of officers. We either have to approve it now or we can table it up until July 1st. I'd be willing to serve again, and I think Chris has said that he'd be willing to serve again. Pretty light agenda tonight. Probably go ahead and get it, have the election of officers if there's a motion, and certainly if there's anybody else that would like to serve as an officer, we would welcome anyone to. So we have a motion to elect officers.
I would move that we re-elect Mr. Sturgeon and Mr. Grattan as president and vice president respectively.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Everybody raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Approve the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Moving on to agenda item 1.5. Rebecca Presta, capital outlay and bond update.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm gonna plug this in here. You guys should all have this spreadsheet in your Word docs. I'll go ahead and put it up here on the screen as well. Maybe. There it goes. So some of you have seen this before. Make it a little bit smaller. Some of you have not. There's a lot of information on this, looking at our capital outlay at the top. So what I've done is I've looked at our revenue at the top here, and then tried to project that out using some averages over historical averages to project the future, and then same thing for our expenditures down below. My plan at this point, now that 22-23 is over, is to go back in and add another column with our actual revenue and expenditures so we can compare those. And then forecast out from there. The other thing to be mindful of in looking at the projection of the revenues, I have not modified this to account for our decrease in the capital outlay mill levy. So that will possibly bring some of this down a little bit. We'll look at that more when we see how that actually affects the revenue coming into that account or that fund. So this will be something that we'll refer back to for years to come, and I'll continue updating it as we have more concrete information. So you see down there toward the bottom where I have the master plan, those are some projects that we have talked about. The ones that are shaded in blue are completed and paid. And you can see forecasting out some future projects that we will need to have cash flow to pay for.
And I would also note that they need to be considerably updated.
Yes,
We
so
talked about
these
that, so.
figures we pulled when I put this together about, a year ago, I believe, is when we started working on this project. So those are all going to change, and who knows what they'll look like in 26, 27, 28. But this is to help us kind of forecast out to see if we build that cash flow in that fund, how we have planned to spend it in the future. And then we can obviously update this as things come along and add different projects. Down at the bottom, I think, is what everyone wants to talk about a little more tonight, which is our bond contingency. So I have updated that contingency to account for the interest that we have earned at Security Bank on those bond funds, which currently, if you look, actually where I have the box highlighted down here, we have just over $8.2 million in that account. Again, those projects that are shaded in blue have been completed and paid for, and that's where we currently sit. Same thing, you'll see some other projects below that we have kind of ballparked some figures on. I know those need to change. Lauren and I talked specifically about a couple that I know have gone up since we started working on this. But either way, you can see that we're going to have some funds that we need to figure out how we're going to allocate and what projects we're going to use.
Is that, does the 8.2, that's everything from leftover from the bond? That's because we had the bond premium that we kind of isolated to the side.
That doesn't include the bond premium.
Okay,
That's additional.
okay.
I think we're probably to a point we need to include that and just look at it all.
I was
in
going
one.
to say anymore. We kind of set that at,
We
it was off to the side before because we weren't done with the project. But I mean, that's, obviously we're done.
And that's why I went ahead and updated it, because Aaron had been using some other numbers. I think we had been looking at 6.2 million. And now that all of those projects are done and every dollar is running through my desk a little more, I'm tracking it more closely than I was before when Aaron was. So it's easier for me to account for those. So I went ahead and added that interest in. So we can look at pulling that premium over as well.
Well, there's probably some sizable interest. It's, I mean,
So I think we should do that and have a complete view, including the premium. Additionally, I'd sent out a message to the board about kind of revisiting capital outlay priorities. And so I think we need to do that sooner than later. Lauren has suggested we do that for a couple of months, and with the holidays and such, we haven't. So I think we need to validate priorities on the capital side too.
Yes, a lot of those projects can come from bond or capital, which is why they're both on this spreadsheet. So I think reevaluating what we need to do and trying to kind of prioritize some of those would not be a bad plan at this point.
yeah, I wouldn't mind that. I mean, still putting the bond premium dollars in the total here or with this, but I mean, I think maybe we line item them and summarize them just so we kind of know it's there, because we talked about using that to bring down the mill levy if necessary, depending on how we could use it. So I think having it all in one is probably good, but then itemized as well.
think
Then
that
we
makes
kind of
sense.
know when we're choosing to spend it, kind
Right.
of where it's coming from.
And Jim, remind me, do you remember what the duration was by which we either have to have those dollars allocated or?
Well, it's like 5 years. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to have a plan. I mean, I think we kind of have.
We have the start of a
I
plan,
mean, we
in
have
my
the start
opinion.
of a plan with that capital budget we did, but I mean, obviously, we do need to visit.
I have a call with Dustin Avey tomorrow. We're going to talk about that, and I'm assuming it was 5 years with the plan.
So I think we ought to probably document that in here too, and we probably need to get with Dustin and better understand what the definition of a plan is. Is it a handful of projects, or do we need bids, or is it somewhere in between there?
Well, the plan was just that we had spent. I mean, it was very vague in the language of the bond, and so it gave us that flexibility. So, but yeah, I'll get clarification on all that from Dustin, and
Okay.
he'd be happy to help with that.
So we'll work to get a working session and make sure that we reprioritize capital projects and can look someone in the eye and say we do have a plan there. So Okay.
So, well, I'm gonna maybe keep
Don't
asking a few
keep
questions
going.
and say a few things. Just, but 22, 23 is again just project. We haven't. Those aren't. You haven't
So
put
those numbers
actuals
are-
in it yet, but they're more accurate than the others
Yes, so those are not actual numbers, but they are more accurate than the projections.
because they don't
Because
get
I was working with some actual
yeah.
numbers.
'Cause we started forecasting growth, and
Yes.
I mean, I guess just kind of for the benefit of the newer members. I mean, I would like the expenses are kind of some of the historical items where we've taken money that gets capital outlay fund can only be used for capital expenses, and these are some typical expenses over time. But if you'll look at this master plan, the below the line items are roofs, parking lots, things that wear out that are one-time things, but they're very expensive here. We're trying to forecast out when those would become due and have the cash available to do them. I mean, historically, I mean, in the past, from the district has never been in a position, rarely been in the position to have the cash to pay for things like that, and they've always had to borrow. So, I mean, while it looks like we have a lot of increase in cash here, the cash is growing with the idea that there's a big project out there that needs to be funded, so we don't have to borrow money in the future. So, I mean, I just, you know, we have lowered this mill levy, but there's a limit on how much we can do that because we need to be planning for some of those expenses into the future.
Good context, Jim. Thank you. Other comments, questions from the board?
I'm going to mention this, but we have a meeting with Greenbush on January 31st or 30th.
I don't recall
30th,
the day.
30th,
It's the
I
last
think.
Thursday, I believe, of this
Yeah,
month.
30th, I think, and we'll do another deep dive into the budget, and Rebecca's part of that
More
too.
on the operational side.
Yes.
Yes.
All operational. Just so the board knows, we'll have that ready in February.
Okay. All right, any other questions for Rebecca?
A lot of numbers.
Rebecca, thank you for keeping this updated. I think this is a good tool to see how, as expenses move in and out, what it does to the balance, so thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 1.6, TMS updates from Casey.
Hayes will probably be rolling in here shortly. He was wrapping up the basketball game over there. So, we're in there. It should be.
It'll come up.
Right there. Good. Again, I'm Casey Brown. I know most of you, but I'm the principal at Tonganoxie Middle School. So, I'm in the middle of my 8th year here with the Tonganoxie School District and 3rd as the lead principal. So, like I said, Hayes is on his way. We just played Eudora this evening for boys basketball. So we were lucky to get the game in. We've had to shuffle some things around with all the snow days. So, but wanted to bring to you Tonganoxie Middle School, just some data points. So really highlighting Tonganoxie Middle School by the numbers. So just an overview. We developed 3 goals for the school year, and anything that we put forth in action at the middle school, we want to be able to align with the 3 goals that we have. So clean and clear academic focus, student and staff involvement, and then our productive PLCs or professional learning communities where the teachers are in small groups really diving into data and what are they doing with that data. So those are the 3 goals in a nutshell that we kind of break down and make sure that everything that we do comes back to these 3 goals. So today we'll be able to visit a little bit about student participation at the middle school. We do feel that when students are involved in their schooling, if they are participating in anything, that it gives a little bit more of a sense of belonging. So really trying to get students involved one way or another. Also looking at student discipline numbers. Staff involvement also, we want to get the staff involved in a sense of a belonging to really improve the community as a whole, getting them involved, school communication, and then our academic data. So looking at our student numbers, we have 422 students at the middle school. And that was based off of a September 20th count. We actually enrolled 3 new students in January that moved in with some other districts, outside from other districts. So, but roughly about 140, to, anywhere between about 140 to 50 is pretty typical for class size. But it was a priority to increase involvement, getting students involved and engaged. So we're rolling out our 2nd year of having school clubs. This is something that takes place once a week during warrior time, and students have an opportunity to join any club. So we have anything from fishing club, Lego club, drama club, a variety of different, we have guitar club, variety of different opportunities that students can join those clubs, and they rotate throughout the year. So we have 100% of our students involved with those clubs. And we do mixed grade levels, so in those clubs it's 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in a particular club, and it's just an opportunity for those students to be with other like-minded students and be involved and talking about things that are similar interests. Looking at the activities, the activities that we looked at were, we did look at athletics. We also looked at our band and our music groups. So we have 62% of 8th graders and 64% of 7th graders that are involved in something. So over half of our kids are involved in some sort of extracurricular activity. We did not include the 6th graders into that because they can't play sports. But there are a number of different things where they can get involved. But we have seen an increased involvement of just our after school activities. We do bingo nights, movie nights, just different things where the students are able to come and hang out after school. Those are always put on by our student council. We do have some, different dances and things like that. And we've just seen an increased involvement, more students wanting to be at those activities. So we also took a look at our discipline because we keep knocking on wood. It's been a pretty quiet school year, which we think is sometimes a good thing when it comes to discipline. So if we looked at last school year, so a year ago in December, our discipline numbers are still relatively low. So last December, we had 30 discipline incidences. So that's something where those are going to be something that is going to have some sort of consequence of a detention, ISS or OSS. So we had 30 incidents by 18 different students last year. And just pulled this data a couple days ago. As of just a few days ago, we've had 17 incidents this year by 11 different students. So pretty low. We both go to league. I go to principal meeting. He goes to assistant principal meetings, and they're just when they're talking about discipline and the headaches that they have, and we say, we can go a really long time. We're always knocking on wood how low our discipline numbers really are. So we just have a good group of kids, honestly, with relatively limited amount of headaches, which is nice. So that means that they're not taking away from the learning environment.
Casey,
Yeah.
that's from August to now, or is that just for the month?
Yeah, so that's
the year to date start of school.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
August.
that does seem pretty low.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. I mean, we have the conduct card system. That's it's like a strike system. And so a lot of things that might bubble up are handled within the classroom. So if a kid's, messing around or doing something like that, a teacher can give that student a signature. That doesn't really come to us. That's kind of like a heavy warning to the kid to knock it off. But anything that comes through our office that is documented, and that's August to now. That's 17 incidents this whole year. And that other one, the December, that would have been August of 22 to December of 22. So still relatively low, but even much quieter this year.
Did you, the slide before that with
Yeah.
the participation, did you
Go for it,
kind of go
yeah.
for that? Okay. And I guess I was going to talk primarily about track.
Yeah.
Okay. And sorry guys, I'm Hayes Farrell, I'm the assistant, and we had a basketball game, so that just got finished up. Conveniently, we had a running clock in the fourth quarter, so I was able to make it here kind of quick. I don't know if that was not great for the boys basketball team, but good for the presentation.
Yeah.
So the main thing I want to touch on with this was when we were crunching these numbers, because Casey and I are both just very committed to getting our kids involved. We think that's, of course, a huge part. We all know that. If they're going to be invested in their school, we got to get them a part of something. So the clubs are nice because it's during the school day, and so it's easy for us to catch kids, but still make them take the time to actually choose a club that they're interested in. So, you know, there's 30 clubs in front of you. Don't just pick one and then complain when you're in something that's not interesting to you. If you're interested in aviation, go to the aviation club. If you're not interested in aviation, I wouldn't sign up for that club. But that's just something we take a lot of pride in. But the numbers I specifically wanted to talk about was we're pretty excited about that 62% and 64% for participants in athletics. I think that would be a pretty positive number just looking at that if that was our end of year data, but that doesn't include track. And track is by far the activity that we get the most kids in, let alone the kids that have maybe not been in something before. Like track and field is the one where we can be hounding kids and saying, hey, you've never, you know, it's okay if you have no clue what that entails, you don't even know what the pole vault is, but there's so many different events for everyone. And track, I think, is going to be a huge thing for us. We had about 120 kids on the track team last year compared to, you know, there's only 18 spots available on the basketball teams. So I really think that's going to be up in hopefully the 70%. A lot of those kids that are previous athletes aren't going to add to that percentage because if they already play football or volleyball, they typically will go out for track anyway. But I do think we will have a lot of first-time athletes who maybe didn't feel comfortable trying out for the basketball team and going through the cut process. That's a pretty intimidating thing for kids. But when we say everyone just gets to be on the track team and there's an event for everyone, there's tons of running, tons of field events. I've already been hounding kids at lunch, and we just kind of say every single kid in this cafeteria should be on the track team. So that was kind of the specific thing I wanted to touch on there is I think we're getting a lot of kids involved in stuff, and I think that percent will go up even higher come spring sports.
Communication, we're just trying to do different ways to get, just increase our communication with parents, with our staff. Started something new this year called the Sunday Spotlight. So it's just an email that gets sent out on Sundays where we just want to do a little bit of a shout out for our staff members. So each week we highlight a new, someone different of the middle school staff. And it just gets sent to the staff and we shout out, we highlight some good things that we, maybe they were working with a student late after school or just different reasons to highlight and give them a shout out. So we do that every Sunday. So that's been new implementation for this school year. So we've had 17 staff members in the spotlight during our Sunday shout outs. Also started implementing the Warrior Weekly. So some of you get those because you are parents of some middle school students. And that's just a quick digital newsletter that gets sent out to all of the families and staff members. It's a week at a glance of items coming to the middle school. So it just kind of highlights sporting events that might be going on or testing that's coming up or different days off. And we just kind of update it with some different happenings that are going on in the middle school. And that goes out every week. It goes out on every Sunday as well. We average about 415 family views. So I can see down to which parent has opened it up, which family is getting, is receiving the information. So we average about 415 of our families are viewing that each week. So, and we do put that out on 5 different platforms. It comes through email, it goes out on Instagram, it goes out on Facebook. So families are able to see that pretty readily, and it's pretty accessible for them.
it's also our, when we need to communicate something in the moment. Casey sends out the Warrior Weekly, which, like she said, we can see those views. We know how many people that's reaching, but I've sent about 5 class tags in the last 24 hours because of the canceled cold weather, and we've got sporting events, and so it's our in the moment medium that we're using right now. I was hoping it would do a good job because it is going to people's inboxes instead of being kind of a text-based push notification thing. But yesterday I sent out a message to say the games are still on as of now, and I can see 18 of the 19 families saw it within about a half hour, so that at least feels like it's working pretty well. And so that's what we're using for, I'm using it a ton for sports. Casey's more of the weekly updates for the whole middle school, but seems to be working pretty effectively for us.
Observations. Another thing that we want to get more teachers admiring and watching what other teachers are doing. So a big part of education is borrowing ideas from other teachers, seeing what other teachers are doing, coming up with some of those aha ideas when you see another teacher doing it and saying, that is such a good idea. I really like what you did there. So this year we implemented learning walks. So it's essentially a peer observation where teachers go into other teachers' classrooms and just observe what's going on. So we do that every other Tuesday, so about twice a month. Teachers will go into other teachers. So one of the rotations each month, Hayes and I will assign what teachers are going to be seeing other teachers, because we want a little bit of a method to our madness, where we know, like, oh, this would be really good for this teacher to see what's going on in this classroom. And so once a month, we assign who they'll be observing, and then the other visit is open. So a teacher can just say, I've heard really cool things are going on in that classroom. I want to go check it out. So twice a month, teachers are going into other teachers' classrooms and doing a quick observation. They just leave a little note of what you're doing in the classroom, or a little bit of feedback of information. That way, teachers can really kind of up their instruction and get other ideas and really see what's going on in the classroom of their peers. So we've gotten some really good feedback. We've had some days where even the calendar didn't work out where we could do it, and teachers were like, can we do a learning walk this week because it didn't work last week? So they're really like getting into each other's classrooms and seeing what's going on. So between the two of us, we're also we've conducted about 300 observations, and those can be anything from a formal evaluation, which isn't as many, but we do a lot of just pop-in observations where we just hit the 6th grade classes, and we're in each classroom for 5 or 10 minutes, and then we're on to the next grade level. So between the two of us, we've hit about 300 classroom visits so far. So we've got a lot more eyeballs in the classrooms, just so we can also, applaud the teachers for doing really great stuff, but then also wanting to keep the teachers, accountable for doing the right thing in the classroom as well. So. Also, map data. We know that map is a big part of what we've been doing in Tonganoxie for many years. And we have not given our winter map test yet. We're actually going to be doing that the week of January 22nd. So we'll be able to have a kind of a mid-year data point as well with map coming up. But this is math. This would have shown the kids taking the test in end of April, beginning of May of the spring of last year. And this was looking at the like grade levels. So 6th graders as 5th graders, 7th graders. So I was able to compare the data that way. So we can see with our math data, there was an increase across grade levels, and that's going from spring to fall. They took the test the first week of September. So even including a summer slide, we did, sometimes there's a summer slide, but that wasn't necessarily the case this time. We did see an increase across all grade levels on their math tests in the fall. We did see similar, we did see growth as well. 6th graders, that they did not, they still scored at the 54th percentile, but we did see an increase among the 7th and 8th graders. So we are intrigued to see what our January data looks like. So but what we have been doing is we have implemented IXL this school year, which also is a different assessment tool. And so we've been able to do a little bit more progress monitoring with our students, and we're seeing growth with that as well. So I will let Hayes talk about IXL.
I've been to a couple of IXL conferences. This was a new program that we rolled out this year, and I do think the middle school's kind of really taken a lot of initiative with this. That's fitting because I think it's maybe a little bit difficult for the elementary to dive in maybe as much as we want to. But IXL is a program that the kids get their diagnostic test completed. They call it their arena, but the kids need to go into IXL's arena and spend about a half hour, and it cranks out a score saying this kid is at a 4th grade math level or a 6th grade reading level. But it diagnoses them for where they're at. We're depending on the kids trying on the diagnostic, but if they don't try on the diagnostic, then they get rewarded when it's time to actually answer some questions with, they could be answering kindergarten questions like, which one is a circle? So it's worth it for them to do the diagnostic fairly, and even if they were to not try their hardest on that, they're going to work their way through the skill-based questions and progress pretty quickly. But what this does is it gives us the information for where the kid's at. And why that's handy for us is, we're all aware that there are more and more kids each year that are not on grade level. We can, there's no point in making any excuses for that. It just is what it is. But we've got a chunk of kids that come in and they're not at a 7th grade math level. Well, we've got to teach 7th grade math. And so what we're really excited for IXL to do is help us meet the kids where they're at with a designated time during the day where they're going to be using the program to answer questions for where they are based at. So if a kid demonstrates through the IXL diagnostic that they are reading at a 3rd grade level, we're going to continue to teach them, and our teachers are going to work with them in their 7th grade class or 8th grade class, and then IXL is going to give us a chance for some designated time where the teachers will work with the kid within that program to say, okay, now is the time for you to work on these 4th grade based questions and try to progress. And we haven't yet got to get any of we haven't taken the map since we've really had a little bit of time to work with some IXL. So the graph in front of you here shows the number of questions that at the middle school we've been answering per week. And you can see we kind of got rolling in August, and then September and October we started peaking, and we've got some kids that have answered a lot of questions. Now Casey and I can see through our admin portal, we've got kids that go home and have answered 8,000 IXL questions. So that, like on October 2nd, when it says the kids in the middle school averaged 125 questions per week, that might have been a week where there was a kid who did 700 questions on their own. But that's the overall data for the number of questions answered. I'm excited to see the MAP data because some of those kids, IXL continues to diagnose them as well, and it'll tell me this kid started at a 4th grade level in math, and right now we're pegging them at about a halfway through 5th grade level. So there's just a lot of excitement to see, does the MAP data show what we're seeing with IXL? But it's just what we are kind of hoping is a meeting the kids where they need met, because you got a kid sitting in the 6th grade classroom, and we're going to do our best to keep them on track and teach them 6th grade math. But if they're operating at a 2nd grade math level, it gets pretty tough pretty quick, and they continue to fall more and more behind. So in a little bit, I'll come back to this when we talk about the change in the bell schedule. But
Does the parent get involved with this or have access to this?
so we have our there's been several things communicated by Becky Naselroad out just in mass communication to the community as far as we're utilizing IXL, and here's the resources that IXL's kind of produced, saying here's how you can use this. But it gives the kid a really good profile as well, and we're hoping that's going to be a part of, for specifically the middle school, when we have student-led conferences here in February. We're going to have that IXL profile that says, this is breaking down and saying they're at a 4th grade level in geometry, they're at a 6th grade level in algebra, and it specifically targets those skills, and we'll make sure people are aware. We have our time in school, but then You know, if you're looking for something for your kids to do at home and they say don't have any homework and you want to say spend 10 minutes answering some IXL questions, it's all constant I guess what I'm saying is the kid could log on and spend 7 minutes on IXL and they'd get through 10, 15 questions and that'd be a benefit. It's not something parents need to feel like, well, we need to block off an hour for you to get anything out of it. It's not at all like that. So we, as a district, have access to the language arts reading portion of it and the math. And so that's been kind of a push for us. And like I said, we've taken the time first semester to kind of get teachers really used to it. And then second semester, we've got a built-in time where we're going to utilize IXL. So I'll talk about that more in a little bit.
With the IXL skills, we see that the students are mainly using this program in their math and reading classes, but they're really pinpointing where those gaps are, where the students are maybe missing certain skills. So the goal is to fill those holes, 1 or 2 skills a week. So, and there are these kind of little mini lessons they get online. They do the activity, they do the lesson, they go through the assessment, and we are seeing a increase of growth both in math and language arts. So we know that by utilizing this just little bits at a time, that they are being able to fill in those gaps. The goal is to fill the skill gaps per student, usually 1 to 2 skill gaps per week. And if we go back to this, now keep in mind that it looks like a little ugly in that December range, but that's where we had Christmas break, and then we've had some snow days. So,
And you can see conferences the week of October 16th. So that's some of those where they drop down or when we just weren't in session.
but it is in order to show continued growth in both math and reading. It is the students need to fill those skill gaps, 1 or 2 skills per week. So by doing that, we are seeing an overall growth with both math and reading. And so we are going to, and I'm going to kind of jump back. So that's IXL. Actually, I'm going to go forward since we're still on IXL. So we've seen some positive results by putting in, supplementing IXL in throughout the school day in math and reading. So couple of different things. We had a situation with our athletics where we have a new sports league this year, and because we're traveling further distances, a lot of our students were having to leave a little bit earlier than previous years. And some of our teachers are coaches, and so our teachers were having to leave a little earlier than we'd like. So we had students that were missing classroom instruction, and we had teachers that were missing classroom time as well because they were coaches. And so we were trying to figure out a way, how can we kind of shift things around so our students aren't missing as much academic time when they leave for their sports. And so we came up with an idea where we were able to shift our warrior time on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Couldn't do it all of the days because we share staff with the high school. But what we were able to do is come up with a new bell schedule where we put a longer chunk of time in the afternoon. And this was a kind of an added bonus. We're able to kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So we're able to, have a little bit of a buffer time with that warrior time at the end of the day, to allow for our athletes to head to their games and their coaches to head to their games without missing core instruction. However, we have a lot of students that aren't athletes leaving, so it was like, what can we do that's beneficial for them? So on those Wednesdays and Thursdays, that's a specific time for students to do their IXL skills. So it's not a study hall, it's not a time to work on homework, anything like that. The time on Wednesdays and Thursdays is going to be dedicated time for the students to work on pinpointed skill instruction. Each student has a personalized kind of pathway of the skills that they need. And so on those Wednesdays and Thursdays, students are going to be able to work on a pinpointed path for them to be able to fill in those gaps where they might have that. So it's just a little bit more of an orchestrated way to make sure that we know that the students are getting the right amount of time covering the skills that they need. And we'll be able to put that in on that Wednesday and Thursday each week.
And just to really put into perspective kind of the athletics, and if, you know, not everyone's in athletics, but in track, if we've got 130 kids leaving the building, that's about a fourth of the building, more than that could be gone. But if so football is the big one, because we've got 7th and 8th grade that travel the same location, and the 3 Spring Hill schools, Lewisburg, Paola, Ottawa, we've got over half the kids that are at least an hour away by bus. And so when they would leave primarily on Wednesdays and Thursdays are their games, but they played sometimes on Tuesday, well, they would have to get out of school at 1:45. They'd have to leave at 2 because they've got to get there before the other school dismisses in order for the bus to drop off and get out of the way. If we don't get there before school dismisses, the kids can't get off the bus and get ready for the game that starts at 4 o'clock. So they were missing a lot of times. We were looking up in the last 4 weeks, the kids hadn't even been to their 8th hour on Mondays and Tuesdays because they would miss that whole class. And then on the block days, they were missing, they'd maybe be there for 15-ish minutes, and then they would miss the whole chunk of the class. And so we were able to create this designated time for IXL, and then also track is primarily Wednesdays and Thursdays events. And by shaving a couple minutes off of each block, we just envision the kids are going to be able to go to over half of the block, and then that 20 minutes at the end of the day, we'll figure out how to keep them getting some IXL time, but they won't miss nearly as much class time. It was just adding up to being some pretty significant academic time. And this is not going to fix everything, because transportation continues to be an issue. If we had situations where maybe they didn't have to go as far away, but the buses would need to drop the kids off and then get back so that they could run their route after school. And so we'd have to have kids dropped off. You know, it was really affecting the amount of time that they were missing in school. So this is not perfect, but I think it's going to be so much better for the amount of academic time kids are going to miss.
Do the students have access to IXL at home?
Mm-hmm.
They do.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily a video game, but there are some kids that they can see. They kind of have a chart that shows their increase, and some kids enjoy just doing it on their own time. And a lot of times our math teachers and language arts teachers also will carve in some time during the class time, and they're really competitive for Jolly Ranchers. So I mean, they're into it. So
Is it primarily those 2 teachers that are the ones who track the progress?
Yes, however, with the shift of doing this during the designated warrior time on Wednesdays and Thursdays, we've actually done professional development, the last 2 rounds of professional development to train all of our teachers on how to access this and how to kind of drive the system and work with their students, because math and reading teachers will do a lot with the data, but now that students are doing the skills testing on the Wednesday and Thursday afternoons, that's going to be done with their warrior time teachers. So now the warrior time teachers can also have the conversations with their students as well. I'm going to go. One more thing we'll fill in. The last piece that we wanted to implement was just really taking a focus on our instruction. We wanted to be very mindful of our instruction. And so we've been doing a lot with visible learning this year. And so basically there is a hinge point of the zone of desired effect. So anything in that blue zone is positive when it comes to instruction. So we're saying, really focus with what you're doing in your classroom. Please ensure that it falls in that blue zone. So that's something that we've been really talking with our teachers since professional development and beginning of the school year. Being very intentional with our instruction, very intentional with our intervention, giving students the proper feedback of how things are going, formative assessments, and really scaffolding how the classes are set up. So with that, focusing on the blue areas there, we have also implemented win time, which is what I need. And that what I need focuses on the individual student. We have those block days on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And by using a lot of our data, by using IXL data, by using our just tests within the classroom, by using anecdotal information, each block day is set up for teachers to roll out what I need. Because they're longer class periods, about 90 minutes, the teachers can work with small groups of students to really target what each individual students need. So putting them into small groups of maybe some skills that they might be missing, or maybe we have a group of students that are accelerated in their learning and they might do some enrichment activities with them. So really working with individual students on exactly what their needs are. And so that is really being very intentional with the instruction that goes on during block times. So block should not be just longer amounts of teaching. Block days should look different. And so the implementation of wing time, we're seeing students in small groups, we're seeing students in kind of station rotations, we're seeing students working individually in small groups with the teachers. So the wing time has rolled out definitely a much more intentional small group instruction.
Yeah, and I think both of these two, we feel like, we earlier when I'm saying the IXL, the kid who's at a 4th grade level is getting that, but it's also our kids who are already at a 10th grade level, and we can see them getting grilled on pretty difficult IXL questions. And we've got a kid that the data right now shows they started at a 1,030, which represents 10th grade 30%, so a third of the way through 10th grade, and they've moved about a half of a grade level this semester. So they wouldn't be getting that content inside of 8th grade algebra. We're hoping it's like, good, they're getting challenged. And so the win time as well, both Casey and I are just, that allows the teacher to have the small group of kids that might need the little extra support, and then they also get that group of kids who ace the project, and they can now get a chunk of time with the highest achievers and take that to the next level as well. So but as she was saying, and I realized IXL is also working with our kids who are above grade level and going to get challenged a little bit.
There's a lot of numbers.
No, it's good. How's the interaction been with Brandy and the instructional coaches? How's that working? How could it work better?
Good. We don't have any instructional coaches at the middle school, but Brandy's very visible. Brandy's in the classrooms. Brandy's working with teachers. She's doing some professional development, station rotations on our PD days. We have team PLCs where we have kind of the longer blocks on Wednesdays and Thursdays where we have 90-minute team time. And she'll go in and kind of do some mini sessions with our teachers as well. So she's very visible and involved.
Okay.
Can you go back to the map data? I just want to make sure I'm clear on what you're presenting. So is that they've met their growth goal? Is that achievement? And when you're talking about the grades, is it like those are the same set of kids?
Yeah.
It's not different set of kids.
So this would have been fifth graders, and then as sixth graders and as seventh graders. So I was able to pull that data, and this means that they are in the 54th percentile. So they're right kind of in that average range of it's not necessarily growth achievement. It's that the sixth graders, they were at the 54th percentile when it comes to their data. So right about average. Okay. It doesn't show their growth. It just kind of shows where they were in that moment.
And we talk about this when we present data, I know, but there's an expected drop when they switch tests from 5th grade spring kids to 6th grade fall with us because it's a different test. They switch from a K through 5 assessment to a 6 through 12, and traditionally there's a drop off of that. So it's kind of a positive when I see them maintaining that because they switch to a more difficult test when they come over as 6th graders for us.
Other questions? Thank you, guys. Appreciate the
Thank you
presentation.
guys.
I do have one quick
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
if you mind.
Yes, ma'am.
And this is just kind of random, but why do you cut for basketball or other sports in middle school when that seems like a developmental stage to me? That cutting them, like I know there are some schools that have C teams even.
Yeah.
Why do we not? If you have 18 kids on a team, and you've got 2 coaches, that's 9 and 9. It seems like you could have a larger group.
Yeah,
That-
it's so most people don't have a C team. There's a couple in our new league that do. I don't believe anyone in the KVL they didn't have maybe they have a separate instructional league, but not an actual A and B team. For us, it really comes down to facilities, and we already kind of have a mess trying to use the elementary gym as often as we do, but pretty often they'll have PTO conferences or something after school, and so for us, we fight really hard to not practice in the mornings. I just feel like it's difficult for middle schoolers because they don't drive. So a lot of those instructional leagues do practice in the mornings because of gym space. We would then need to open up more stipends for more coaches. When we tried to interview for an assistant basketball coach on the girls' side, we had 1 applicant, and luckily they turned out to be did a really good job. But girls, we don't even have the numbers. We didn't have any cuts in girls basketball because we had enough tryout that everyone made the team. Boys, we wouldn't have enough for a C team. We cut, I think, 5 boys at one of the grade levels, and so we wouldn't have enough for a C team. It creates a facility, just a space issue for us because we can't have everyone practicing in the same gym. Right now, the 7th and 8th grade split up and rotate who goes to the elementary school after school. They rotate weekly, and then on the days that the elementary school is in there, we have 40 kids in the gym, and you can kind of get through a day, but when you've got to have 20 kids on half court for each grade level, it just doesn't seem like it's a super productive day as far as skill development. And right now I watch our teams, and we are very behind the 8 ball compared to a lot of
Well,
other league
I've
schools.
kind of been watching it through the years as you go into high school.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder if we're cutting kids that have maybe the potential to be competitive in high school. Maybe not, but maybe we are. And it seems like we're losing a lot of kids that we spent a lot of time developing in middle school. By the time they get to high school, they're not participating any longer. So maybe there were some kids that were really interested and just needed some more development.
Yeah.
That could then in turn be more of a high school player. When you talk about involvement, that tends to seem
Sure.
like you had 5 kids that wanted to be involved.
Yep.
That couldn't be.
I've been in talking with the rep quite a bit because I do see a pathway for Tonganoxie to where we were trying to get it going in volleyball. The kids that got cut, we were trying to have an instructional league going at the same time as the season that we then gave an outlet for those kids to continue playing the sport. It was just kind of too little too late once the season got going, but that's
There is very much a direct correlation between involvement in
Oh, yeah.
school and success in school and graduation rates.
Yep.
So if you look at those kids, so it seems like you guys are doing a great job of getting them involved during the school day. Some of those kids may need a little more, and I guess it's been a concern of mine for a while.
No,
It just seems like it.
It is probably the worst day of the year for the coaches and I are those cut days because it's just the kids have never been cut from a sport probably before then. Yeah,
And it's not that I don't agree with cuts because I definitely think in high school that's a great place to do that.
Yeah.
But in middle school, it seems like it's a developmental area where you
And there's
should be
there's
working
also a
with that.
balance of also playing time because you also want to be able to have, if you have too many kids, then you're gonna have some.
I've
kids that
seen
aren't
some that are
getting
they know they're just a practice player. They're not going to compete other than they held some scrimmages
Yep.
within their school, but they don't compete against other.
I think what we would really like to see is an increased involvement in the rec leagues, the rec teams, because we're also just we are behind the 8 ball when it comes to just the skills in general. The athletic skills are just not where we would like to see them, and I think if we saw them getting involved at a very young age, and maybe the skills would be a little bit more developed, because some of our middle school girls have they don't even know how to play competitive basketball. So really starting from the ground up when they're 12 and 13. So if we could get a ball in their hands at 6 and 7, we certainly could benefit from that as well.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
All right, moving on. So I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
A second.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on. Any public comments, Oliver? Guess there's nobody here. That'd be hard to do. Sorry. Mr. Feldkamp.
Yep, this will be pretty short. I know that Justin is working on trying to set up some work sessions or special board meetings, per se, and sent out the survey this afternoon. I appreciate that. So, we have two different areas: the academic, piece. We want to look at that, and of course, the other side of that is the capital outlay projects and prioritizing all those. We've kind of put all that on hold for quite a while, and it's really time to start revisiting all that as we talk tonight. And then a couple of highlights here. We had the Deputy of Commissioner of Education, Randy Watson, visit with us early in January. Met with us for about 2.5 hours, and so we had a very in-depth visit. I think there might have been a couple of pictures on our website showing that, and it was good. I mean, we got really good insight from him.
He looked better sitting in this chair than I did.
Yeah, he was
Maybe-
pretty sharp.
I don't know
Maybe he
about
wants the
that.
job.
You look pretty good over there.
Yeah, he was all by himself.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it was good. I mean, I was glad he did that for us, and it gave us a chance to kind of pick his brain. But on the other side of that, he also was asking us, our challenges, that what's going on that is important to us. And so he was a good listener too. So it was all in all a very good day. We continue to work on our internal responsibilities. This is something we've been working on for quite a while. Talked to Bart Swartz again today. We have another meeting set up at the end of January where we're going to continue this process and try to come to a good conclusion on that. Friday and Saturday, big day here at Tonganoxie, where we hosted the Class 4A, 3A, 2A, 1A debate. That was 4-speaker, 2-speaker debate, and you might have seen that our two-speaker finished second in state and did a wonderful job. And I will say this: we received so many compliments. Not just the facilities, but also that Mr. Harrell knows how to put on a tournament and is highly respected by the state of Kansas. And he, I think what Cody was trying to obtain, and Mr. Harrell, was to have a great experience for the people involved, and I think we did that. I mean, I can't say it any better than that. So we received a lot of positive feedback for both Friday and Saturday under some, pretty tough weather conditions. And as you know, the new board member training has been canceled. So we'll come up with another plan. We might try to do something internally. Might look, because the travel was pretty steep. Then as I mentioned with Rebecca, we are having another deep dive into our year-end projections on January 30th in the morning. And then the other thing is the Monday. We have our next January special ed meeting with Tanya and I. And once again, it'll be budget, staffing, all of those things. That dominates our conversations. Services. So we got a lot going on there. So that's what I have.
Is there any on the debate thing? I know that's like in the past it was always like in certain towns for a number of years in a row. I mean, does it rotate every year, or is it we have the opportunity to host that? I mean, I don't want to put that force on Mr. Harrell if he doesn't want it, but I would assume it was probably good for the community having some people in town.
So what you do is you put in you apply. You apply for it. Then Keisha comes out, they tour your building, and then they try to get a feel for it. They try to spread that around. they'll go east, then they'll go west. You know, they try to move it. And so this was just, in some way, our turn. I think the last time we hosted was way back in 2013. I think that. And it was the last time I think we had a state champion, from what I recall. Does that sound right?
I don't even remember hosting then.
Yeah, that was what I was told, is we did host it in a few years back. So yeah, it just rotates.
Good deal. It's great getting people in town.
Yeah, it was great.
All right, any questions for Lauren? Moving on to Tanya.
All right. We've had a lot of snow days in here, and it feels like we've been back to school and then we're out again and back and out. So we've gotten going on a lot of things. The math adoption is still ongoing. The committee has been working, digging through samples. We did have secondary demos on January 3rd. And we had one cancel on us at the last minute. So we have rescheduled them for the end of January. And then we're going to take a look at our survey and figure out, based on those results, you know, which ones made the cut, which other ones we didn't see that we want to see. So we're still in that process. Elementary actually had their demos on Friday. And even though it was a snow day, we had virtual demos. So it turned out great. And folks were able to join us from home, and we had a lot of staff members. So I appreciate them logging on for that and watching the demos. I did send out a survey for those folks, and there were some clear ones that came to the top. We do have a couple others we want to see that have not come in yet, and we'll schedule those demos soon. But we're narrowing the field. And for calendar committee, we had sent out a survey right after Christmas break. The calendar committee had come up with 4 drafts of the calendars, and we sent those out to all of the staff members, and they got to give their feedback on the 4 drafts. The survey just closed on Friday, so I've looked through it, and I'll be going through it with the calendar committee. We have a meeting set up soon, and then we will dig through that, and the calendar committee will bring their proposed calendar to the board meeting at our February meeting. And then, as Justin had mentioned, we're trying to set up some work sessions, and Lauren had mentioned we'd like to have a data meeting, kind of like what we did last year, to share our data with the board members. We will have a KISA visit coming up, our accreditation visit, and those will just be yearly visits. This is kind of a touch base. As you've heard, they're redoing KISA or reformatting it. They got it approved at the December board meeting, and then they had some updates at the January state board meeting. So we'll get an update on that soon, which will affect, you know, what we're doing with our data and then what we're doing with our strategic plan. So those kind of tie in together. But we hope to have a strategic plan ready to go soon. Once we hear some updates on what they discussed at the January board meeting, I should hear an update on that Friday at the state curriculum leaders meeting. So I'm hopeful that we will have everything ready to go soon.
Are there pieces of that strategic plan that can happen? I want to make sure that we're making progress on it.
Yes.
And I know there's things we're waiting on relative to KISA accreditation. Are there things we ought to be doing on the strategic plan in parallel, and or are there things we need to do in the interim, depending on? I mean, it would seem like if you hear something by Friday, it's a non-issue. But if this were to drag on,
Oh yeah, it's not going to change that much. And there are some pieces of KISA that we just want to make sure are fully aligned with what we already have in our draft strategic plan, and then we'll get all that put together. I don't think it'll take much longer. I'd like to have, by the March meeting, I would like to have the draft to you that is ready to go with our executive summary and all of the pieces pulled together. We're already doing everything that we need to do. We're collecting baseline data. That is something that we always do, and I hope to have everything ready for you by March.
okay, thank you. Questions for Tanya?
The only other thing I wanted to add was special ed funding. If you've been following that in the news, there has been a renewed attempt by the Education Committee to take a harder look at sped funding to try to increase some sort of a plan to get, statewide and federal funding up higher than what it has been. We have a Council of Superintendents meeting tomorrow afternoon where Dr. Watson's going to give us another update, but it's something that I know the governor has put into her budget plan, and it's something that we all need to watch because it's going to be hugely important as we move forward. Even if they started on a 4-year plan, they just have to have some sort of a plan to increase the amount of sped funding for the state of Kansas. So we're watching it very closely.
All right, any other questions for Lauren or Tanya? No action items tonight. I would move that we adjourn to executive session for 15 minutes, just the board, and another 10 minutes with Mr. Feldkamp afterwards. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, you text you that.
You got your keys and everything.
Yeah. No action coming out of executive session at this time. Possible announcements and upcoming dates. I'd sent out the Google form about trying to get 2 working sessions going. I don't know whether we'll get them both done. The academic data one is the most important. Lauren and I discussed this afternoon, so if we could make one of those dates work, it'd be really good. Any other announcements or dates? I think we're adjourned. Thank you.